Happy New Year. Happy New Year. How is everybody doing? This is MongoSlade. So I decided to do a surprise live stream at 11:45 in the morning. Anyway, I just wanted to do this basically because I didn't do one on Sunday. But today is the beginning of the 2024 wrestling cycle, I guess you could say. There's a lot of free agents out there. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a little bit of predictions. And because I don't really want to spend a lot of time on Kevin Dunn leaving WWE, we're going to talk about that too. So let's talk about that first. Apparently, Kevin Dunn is separated from WWE. I think that is immediate. It is not he's going to set a date. I saw a story that said they wanted him to stay until WrestleMania, but he decided he was going to leave. Now, a lot of people are trying to figure out what this is about. Part of it was that Endeavor, since taking over, is now going to try to take control of WWE's production. Mark Shapiro, who I forget what he does at Endeavor or TKO or whatever. I mean, there's just so many empty suits running around controlling wrestling now. He made a comment about when he worked at ESPN, and he knows how producers are always trying to fight for every single camera, but he knows what he's doing and that kind of thing. And he was wanted to cut production. This was around the same time he started talking about cutting the amount of house shows WWE did. And I said then what I'm going to say now, and that is everybody who is super excited about Kevin Dunn leaving, which I'm kind of ambivalent about. I really don't care that Kevin Dunn is leaving. I think WWE needed a new director for a long time, if we're being honest. And it's not just because of the assistant camera cuts, because I don't think that's going to change very much. I do think that you just needed a new vision. 30 years of the same guy directing the product is just a long time. There's a lot of guys who have been doing camera work and stuff in NXT, and there's different ways of doing it now that I think it would make an interesting change, I guess you could say, to WWE. And it's necessary. And I'm not surprised that he's leaving after Shapiro made the public comments about wanting to get rid of house shows and getting rid of production. So he apparently there's some, according to PW Insider, there's an issue with Kevin Dunn having pretty much always had control over the production element of WWE, and now other people want to have their opinions, and they basically want to take over the thing, and he won't be dictated to. He's been in this position for a long time. He knows what he's doing, and he doesn't want anybody telling him what to do. So he's like, look, if it's not going to be the boss himself being Vince McMahon, I don't need to do this. So he's been doing this for 30 years. He's had a high level position in the company. He's got FU money, and he's telling Endeavor to go fuck off, basically. You guys want to tell me what to do. I don't want to do what you're telling me what to do. I'm going to leave. And I cannot disagree with that. I mean, if you have that ability, I suggest it. But I think that WWE needed a new look. Anyway, the assistant camera cuts was an annoyance, but it's also a thing that they do in Hollywood. And I've always said that the assistant camera cuts, I believe, is mostly due to the PG element, more so than who the director is. I don't think it's just that. Again, Kevin Dunn worked in WWE for 30 years, which means he was there in the 80s, he was there in the 90s, he was there in the Attitude Era. Why did all of a sudden he decide that 100 camera cuts was the right decision to do? He's been there 25, 30 years before the assistant camera cut started. So I'm thinking it's mostly got something to do with the PG rating, because that's when you started seeing a lot of it. WWE had already had glossy production since the late 80s. But when you start seeing like the assistant camera cuts and the god-awful thing where the guys were going up and down with the cameras for chair shots and stuff like that. That stuff became pretty recent. And I think that has a lot to do with the PG rating, not necessarily with Kevin Dunn himself. That's why I don't think it'll change that much. So everybody who's getting super excited about it, thinking it's going to change, I don't think it's going to change that much. Kevin Dunn directed, the late 80s, early 90s WWF, when there wasn't a sexy amount of camera cuts, when there were some really great shots. There were still a lot of great shots recently. But there have been, of course, some production errors. The missing of AJ Styles' debut, Royal Rumble 2016, which was a huge botch, where they had the camera mostly on Roman Reigns' reaction instead of on when they missed Edge's spear. Was that Royal Rumble 2021 or 2020 or something like that? So with the excessive cuts, they have missed out on quite a bit, and it does take away from the story to have all of these cuts. But I don't think it has anything to do with Kevin Dunn specifically, as much as I think a lot of the cuts and a lot of the weird camera stuff that they do has to do with the PG rating. But Kevin Dunn apparently having some issues with Endeavor, who apparently just kind of wants to cut back on the production cost. I get it. I understand it. They're trying to turn this thing into a marketing machine. The same thing where they started talking about the ropes are clean and the ring is clean, and they want to put advertising on that and all this stuff. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think that people who are so excited for Vince to be gone and now they're excited for Kevin Dunn to be gone, I don't think that this stuff is axiomatically a good thing, So I think people should really reconsider what they're celebrating and why they're celebrating it, So, but I'm not upset that Kevin Dunn's leaving. In fact, Kevin Dunn needed to go. It's just you need a fresh vision every once in a while. That was the positive about Vince leaving. It's like, yeah, you needed to have a fresh vision eventually. So you get a fresh take, but when it comes to the camera production, I don't see much changing right now. But I'm trying to find the exact quote Mark Shapiro made where he was talking about cutting cameras, and I'm looking for the exact quote, but I can't find it. But I know it had something to do when he was talking about cutting house shows. So here's when he's talking about cutting off some of the house shows, rebuilding the audience, yada yada yada, non-televised events. I'm looking at this, and I don't see the exact quote that I was thinking of, but I know he mentioned it. He mentioned wanting to change WWE production, so it's not a surprise really that these guys come in and they're trying to run things the way that they want to run them, and they now own the majority of the company, so they're the ones making the calls and making the decisions, and Kevin Dunn doesn't feel like he has to do it. So he's like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here, chief, And I'm not mad at him, but we needed a new vision anyway. I just don't expect a lot of the camera cuts to change too much, because I think that's the nature of what these guys do now, due to the PG nature of the product. They want to show as little violence as possible. So I've noticed that they do a lot of camera cuts when there's a lot of violent scenes, especially chair shots and stuff like that. But I wonder who's going to take over. A lot of people are pitching for Jeremy Borash to take over and become the new WWE director, and that's interesting. I know he's been doing a lot of the video packages specifically for NXT and stuff like this, and I like that. Oh, here it is. I finally found it. He says, in either Vegas for UFC or Stanford production facility for the WWE, there are a lot of production efficiencies. Even if our production chiefs want to tell me there's not, frankly, I worked at ESPN for 12 years. I oversaw all production. I've been through all the song and dance with every producer who treats every tape machine and camera like it's a baby and doesn't want to give it up. And we're here to improve our margins. So we're going to scrutinize every dollar on the production end of every single one of these events and every single one of these telecasts, and we're going to realize substantial savings. What beyond the 100 we haven't yet forecasted, but we'll share more of that as we get into 2024. So as you noted, I know I read it kind of slow because I'm kind of off a little bit. It says, I worked at ESPN and for 12 years I oversaw all production. I've been through all the song and dance with every producer who treats every tape machine and camera like it's a baby and doesn't want to give it up, and we're here to improve our margins. So are you surprised now that Kevin Dunn quit when Mark Shapiro is taking over, and has this sort of attitude that he knows best and he knows what he doesn't want to hear it? You think you need all these cameras? You don't need all these cameras. You think you need this tape machine? You don't need this tape machine. You think you need this? You don't need this. We're trying to improve our margins here. And this is the problem that I had with Endeavor taking over anyway. They don't know shit about wrestling. Wrestling is not ESPN, cuz. But I don't know. I actually kind of respect it, if we're being honest. If this is the reason why Kevin Dunn left, is because Mark Shapiro is coming in trying to tell him what to do. When the whole thing is Ari Emanuel and all these guys basically said they was going to leave WWE alone. They said they were going to leave UFC alone. They were going to leave WWE alone, and then they come in and say, "Well, we're going to nitpick a little bit. We're going to cut this and cut that." And these guys are like, "Wait a minute, maybe not." But Kevin Dunn has a terrible reputation. Hundreds of stories out there of him being a douchebag to like various wrestlers, and we know Jim Cornette he hates Kevin Dunn. John Moxley talked negatively about Kevin Dunn in his book. There's a lot of people who don't like Kevin Dunn, just don't like him as a person, and therefore don't really care for his work. And I can't disagree with that, but we won't know whether this thing is going to be any good or not until they put a new chief in place, and until somebody takes over and starts implementing their vision. It won't be immediately, even though I think Kevin Dunn is gone immediately. I don't think he's going to be there tonight, for instance, for Monday Night Raw. I don't think it'll actually change until maybe April, because that's probably when they'll find somebody who can do it long term, and then that person will have an opportunity to implement what they want to do in terms of production. And it's a big change, but it's an important one. I think Vince being gone opened the door for pretty much all of these opportunities to take place, because these are Vince's guys, and now they're starting to get pushed out. I wouldn't be surprised, and one of my predictions is by the end of 2024, Bruce Pritchard will also be gone. And I don't like to make predictions, but I think that's going to be my top prediction, is by the end of 2024, Bruce will not work in WWE anymore. It seems that now that Triple H has the unshackled control, there's not going to be much of a reason to keep around guys like Bruce, guys like Michael Hayes. He's going to want to replace them. And I can see that maybe somebody like Michael Hayes or somebody like Bruce Pritchard being replaced by either Shawn Michaels or William Regal, and those being sort of his guys, and maybe bringing in some other guys for the creative element, especially people that he worked with in NXT. And I think that having a guy like Bruce there and a guy like Michael Hayes there, it was good it's always good when you transition between things to, one, get rid of a lot of guys who are going to be disruptive, who are loyal to the old regime. So you have a lot of people who worked with Vince, worked for Vince a long time. You want to get rid of them. Kevin Dunn's one of those kinds of people you kind of want to get rid of them. I'm surprised Bruce is still there. I'm surprised Michael Hayes is still there. But you want to get rid of those guys because they're going to be so resistant to what you're doing, because it's not how they used to do things. and then you want to bring in your guys. But if you start to slowly transition some of those guys out, like every once in a while you replace them, then it becomes seamless to the audience. It becomes seamless to us because it's going to seem like it's the same thing. And that's really what some people have been saying is like there's been a notable change in creative. Of course, the matches got much longer, much longer. The title runs became much longer too. The kinds of people who are being featured on the show have changed. The structure of the less comedy, more matches, that kind of thing. And now that Triple H is going to end up having a lot of that control, you're going to start seeing a lot of people whose authority is going to be minimized. You're going to start seeing a lot of people whose positions are going to be minimized. And those people are eventually going to get phased out. But I think that this Kevin Dunn situation has a lot to do with Mark Shapiro and him wanting to cut production at WWE. Because he was pretty open about it. He was pretty loud about it. And Kevin Dunn doesn't play well with others. So he's like, if I can't do it my way, I'll leave. And since he was such an important piece, he got fuck you money. Why should he sit around and be told what to do by these guys who don't know anything about wrestling? You know, it's their company now. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Dunn didn't talk to Vince about it. You know, he probably talked to Vince about this whole thing, and Vince was just kind of like, look, you know, it's their ship now. You know, let them do what they want to do. You could just walk away. You should just walk away, and he did. It's an interesting bit because Vince is in a situation where he can't go anywhere else. A lot of people don't realize this, but Vince signed a contract when he sold the company that he can't compete with WWE. He can't go found another promotion or anything like that. And it's likely that other people have done similar. You know, I'm pretty sure that if Kevin Dunn wanted to go work for AEW, he probably couldn't, at least not for a certain amount of time. And I wouldn't suggest him going to work for AEW in the first place. Again, he's got fuck you money. He doesn't need to work. So I don't see like, oh, should AEW pick him up? Like, what are you talking about? Like, half the roster who worked in WWE hate the fucking guy. You know, it's not a good idea to piss off your talent to that degree. It is not necessary, especially when it's not necessary. You know, they need help in terms of production in AEW, but I don't think that it matters that much. All right, let's get. What do you guys think about this? Smooth Realism says it won't make much of a change. Wrestling needs a new direction. It seems like the realism of the actual wrestling hasn't evolved since forever. They still spam the same formula and tropes. Well, that's not really going to change that much. The thing is, all the mediums that are undergoing rapid change are also undergoing rapid deterioration. Now, we're entering a bubble when it comes to sports. And what I mean by that is these might be the big contracts WWE is about to get for Raw and probably for Peacock in the next few years are probably going to be the last for a long time. These cable companies cannot afford this stuff. The streaming services are constantly losing money. The money that is being given to like the NFL and WWE and NASCAR and Major League Baseball, that stuff is not sustainable because ad agencies are having trouble finding an audience in the streaming services, and the streaming services are having trouble making money. So when you have companies that are undergoing rapid change, like some Hollywood studios, like, you know, Comic Book Medium, what they're doing is they're basically running off the people who already liked it because they're trying to move away from what made it popular and what made it work. And in a time where you're in a transition period where it's hard to make money, that's the last thing you want to do is run off people who traditionally love the product. And this is where I kind of raised an eyebrow again with that Mark Shapiro comment where he started talking about getting rid of the C&D towns for live events, because I'm saying like a lot of the C&D towns are where WWE fans come from. You know, a lot of them are small town folks, and you know, and they don't have a lot of money, but they're very dedicated to the product. Once you push those people away, you're left with the fickle big city crowds, and those people they oscillate from loving wrestling to hating it. They also tend to be very politically motivated, and it's never a good thing to attack your base. And to me, it seems like WWE is undergoing a change, which is necessary, even in creative. I'm even okay with Vince leaving, even though I don't like that Triple H took over. It's necessary because it can't be the same way forever. Vince can't. He's not going to live forever. So somebody is going to eventually take over. And Kevin Dunn couldn't work there forever, and maybe he should have been gone a long time ago. But we're in a position where the fans now have to, a lot of fans, in fact, I would imagine most of the audience has never lived in a wrestling world that did not have Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon in control. And now you do. And it's going to be an interesting situation as we watch it go forward about whether this is going to be a positive thing or a negative thing. And is Endeavor going to go out of their way to piss off the base wrestling fans, the base of WWE's audience? Is Triple H going to piss off the base of WWE's audience? And while it's successful right now, are they going to get very high on their own success and end up running people off? That could be a question. I've always thought about that myself. Well, I always said, this Triple H thing is kind of working right now because it's different. But in 5 years, it won't be different. In 6 years, it won't be different anymore. Will we be now saying that Triple H is old and washed and needs to get out of here? And what would the product look like at that time? Like, we're all concerned, well, I'm concerned about him wanting to push undersized performers that are work rate guys and stuff like that, But you also have to look at least right now, he doesn't have to do anything to change the product too much. For instance, the biggest changes to the product have been the introduction of CM Punk, Cody, and that's pretty much it. And I guess Gunther. That's pretty much it. Most of the other talent that is in the position were inherited by Triple H. Roman Reigns was already there. Was already in the position that he was in. The Bloodline story was already running. It was a handoff. When he got the book, the Bloodline story was already in motion. The Cody Rhodes thing was already in motion. There were some things that were already in motion that he has not really changed. So I think we talked about this in the Discord, that what will be the first true Triple H WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, and I think it'll end up being next year, because this year is pretty much continue the Cody thing. You have to add CM Punk in there somehow because that was a wild card that nobody saw coming. But you have that situation. But a lot of the other stuff is just basically staying the course. We know that Vince pretty much coughed up control of the company around WrestleMania this year, but WrestleMania was already booked. So it is what it is. But now, I would imagine that they're just staying the course between 39 and 40, and maybe 41 will be like the first real Triple H WrestleMania where he's going to put his top guys in place. And by then, I think a lot of Vince's soldiers will be gone. Michael Hayes and Bruce Pritchard and some of the other people backstage, they will be gone. And that'll be an interesting time. He'll have all the pieces that he wants at that point. Some of the guys that he wanted to bring back that he couldn't, he'll have got them by then, I'm sure. Some of the people that, and by that I mean like Malachi Black and Sasha Banks or whatever. But he'll have more of an opportunity to do his own thing once the Bloodline story and everything is over. Once it no longer dominates the WWE, he'll have to create his own story, and we'll see how far that goes. Smooth Realism says, if anything, they've evolved since the 90s. At least we had dynamic story segments, characters, etc. I agree. I think that the Attitude Era did a lot of damage to the WWE in terms of how it presents wrestling. It was fun, but it lacks rewatchability. Just like a lot of television and stuff in the 90s. There was a lot of great things in the 90s, but they don't stand up 20 some odd years later, 30 some odd years later. A lot of the Attitude Era content doesn't. I'll be the first to tell. I know there's a lot of people who disagree with me, but there is over 70% of the Attitude Era content does not stand up today. It's terrible. Like, it's truly terrible shit. And if it was produced today, people would just say it was terrible, but a lot of, people look at it in terms of nostalgia. But a lot of that content, a lot of the matches, and a lot of the stories and things that they did would not fly today for whatever reason. I think the edginess and the Austin McMahon stuff clearly works continuously. But a lot of the stuff, if you look back on it 15, 20 years later, it didn't stand up. And you kind of get the idea that they would not do that kind of shit today, or they can't do it today. But also, who the hell would want to watch, Big Boss Man versus Al Snow today? Like, as much as I love the Big Boss Man, I have no interest in that Big Boss Man versus Al Snow. I didn't have any interest in it then. I certainly don't have any interest in it now. So when I watch Attitude Era shows, pretty much I spend most of my time rolling my eyes at the content, and how stupid a lot of the storylines and stuff were. But at least there were things happening, I guess you could say, and it was different. Things gonna change. Things always changing, bro. It's necessary. Change is necessary. Change or die. Here's the thing. Why do people think MJF go to WWE just because he's not on the AEW? I'm going to talk about free agents in a minute. Let's get through this, and I'm going to come back to this whole MJF and free agents thing. So, there we go. Will Triple H destroy NXT since he took over? What's the use for NXT? Well, NXT still has the same usage. Now, the vision has to change because the vision always changes. But understand that NXT has gone through. It hasn't been around that long. It's been around for about 10 years, but it's constantly changed because the needs of the company changed, right? So when NXT first was created, it was developmental. This is where you send indie prospects and people that you recruited to learn how to work, to learn how to do WWE style, find gimmicks, find characters, etc. And then that was the case until about 2014, 2015. And then it became its own standalone promotion as Triple H was like, WWE needs competition. It needs a different vision of the business or whatever. So he starts making NXT completely different from the main roster. And this is where you started getting the idea that the NXT roster and the main roster are two different things. And NXT became one of the hottest wrestling promotions in the world. And that lasted for about 5 years, between 2015 to about 2020. Then AEW came along and did the same thing NXT was doing, but on a bigger budget with more money, and wasn't under the WWE umbrella, and they stole all of the stars and all that kind of stuff. And then Vince took over, and Vince said, we need developmental. We don't need all these indie wrestlers. A lot of them are too small or too old. You can't be 20 years old with 20 years experience. We need young talent. We need dynamic talent. We need talent with size. So Vince came in, blew it up, got rid of the Undisputed Era, and was going to get rid of Io Shirai, and was bringing in like Tiffany Stratton and Brian Breaker and Zion Quinn, who I noticed disappeared as soon as Vince lost control of NXT. So a lot of the newer talent, they came in because Vince said we need developmental. We need guys, girls that we can bring up to the main roster. We need more Bianca Belairs, more Rhea Ripley's, fewer Bronson Reeds, Swerve Stricklands, fewer smaller guys, or guys who have 30 plus and been in this business a long time and haven't achieved anything and want a lot of money and all that stuff. And he brought that up. And I'm concerned that now that that era is over, you know, and it's been this way for about 18 months now, where NXT has become largely what NXT UK was. You know, like it's no surprise to me that Ilya Dragunov is now at the top of NXT when he was at the top of NXT UK. You know, so guys like Tyler Bate, a lot of Pete Dunne matches and stuff like this, and you started, the character work changed, the storyline elements changed, and I have to say I'm not as much of a fan of NXT now as I was then. Like, I loved NXT 2.0. It was nutty. You know, it was a nutty wrestling product. Because it was a lot of people who were young. They didn't really know what they were doing, but they were going out there trying new characters, doing different stuff. And it was easy to watch. NXT is still fun to watch because they still do nutty shit on there. But there's a lot of, the matches are just long now. A lot of European talent that aren't really over in terms of personalities. They get a lot of opportunities. I think we'll see whether Trick Williams wins that title tomorrow night, whether they're committed to building new stars or not. You know, and the only way that you can get rid of Trick Williams not winning the belt is if you continue his feud with Carmelo Hayes. Other than that, Trick Williams needs to win the belt. You know, but we'll see. But NXT, what it is whatever the company needs at that particular time. You know, NXT for a time was the competitor to main roster WWE, and they treated it as such. They started actually putting some money into it. They let them run buildings, and they were spending tons of money on talent. And then Vince was not seeing the return on those talents, which is why I think that Shinsuke Nakamura, despite winning the Royal Rumble, never really got pushed by Vince. Is because he kind of just looked at it and was like, the finances probably not making sense. You know, as much as everybody loved Asuka, you know, maybe the Vince was dead set on having bigger stars in these spots, not just better wrestlers. And you can see it again and again when Vince went to Charlotte, he went to Ronda Rousey, and he never really gave the ball to Asuka. He put the belt on her a couple of times. You know, he definitely saw the value, but he didn't see her as being the jewel of the company, much like, you know, Triple H saw her as the centerpiece of NXT. Vince didn't see her that way. You know, and it was the same thing with Shayna Baszler, where NXT used to be built around Shayna Baszler, which was a disaster. You know, it was a disaster, but that's what he liked, and it was because it was NXT, people accepted it. But I think if you go back and look at the NXT women's division, and you can see that Bianca Belair was just basically nobody in that roster, and how long did it take for her to get over on the main roster? It didn't take long at all. So you would have thought she, right out of the cannon, should have been a top star in NXT. And that's why I'm concerned about Braun Breaker. That's why I'm concerned about Trick Williams. Because I'm like, they may get over and they may be special, but is Triple H going to give a fuck? I mean, look what he did to Austin Theory. You know, there was nothing wrong with Austin Theory when he got the book. Austin Theory was being set up to be the next guy. He was being set up to be a success. And now look at him. You know, Triple H has done nothing to elevate Austin Theory. He put him in a match with John Cena that he won. But if you think about that today, does it seem like Austin Theory really won a match over John Cena? No. You know, it doesn't feel like it. I guarantee you, if Vince McMahon would have had Austin Theory beat John Cena would probably be, Austin Theory would be fucking world champion right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just highly unfortunate. But that's why I'm concerned about, like, the direction of NXT and what they're going to be looking for. And then we're going to talk about free agents and talk about how that might change NXT too. So we'll get into that into a second. But yeah, things are definitely changing. The Dominic Mysterio stuff was also in motion when Vince was there. They had turned Dominic heel before Vince gave up the company. But Dominic Mysterio has been a huge success for the Triple H era. He's done a great job with Dominic. Judgment Day is about the same. They've been elevated because they've been utilizing Rhea Ripley better. And I think that's one of the things that Triple H has, is that he believes more in Rhea Ripley than Vince did. I think Vince liked Rhea Ripley, but I don't think he saw her as being the centerpiece of the company. I think he was wrong in that. Rhea Ripley is tremendous. But Vince was always about Charlotte and basically the four horsewomen. Bayley and Sasha and all them. Triple H was always kind of looking for the next one, but he also has that eye towards like Japanese talent and stuff like that. AJ3 says Triple H will possibly do his own round robin tournament now that he's in control. What would be called? Oh my god! If he does that, bro, I'm gonna be on this bitch complaining every single week. I bitched about that goofy Heritage Cup tournament thing. I don't really like the Heritage Cup either. I think I've said that. Like, it's different, but I don't really like it. I didn't really care for it when it was in NXT UK. I really don't like it now. It takes up too much time on the show. As much as I like Noam Dar, he's very charismatic. He's an interesting character. I don't really like that Heritage Cup thing. I really don't like the round system. But when they started doing the round robin tournament for the Heritage Cup, that sucked. That was garbage. But they was able to boost NXT's ratings by putting main roster stars on there. Becky Lynch and Dominic Mysterio and all of them. And I'm pretty sure they're going to do it again, especially when they move to CW. But that explains why NXT's ratings have started to slide lately, is because they took the title off of Becky Lynch, and they de-push Tiffany Stratton. She was at the top, and then she had gotten the rub working with Becky, and now she's working with Fallon Henley, but she's not in the picture anymore. And that's unfortunate. And also, when it comes to NXT, you had that weird thing with Mandy Rose where she was there being dominant for a while, and it seemed like she was going to make the next star. And Vince seemed to really care about her and was going to invest in her. And then as soon as, the whole thing happened when she got fired, and there was that weird time with Roxanne Perez, and then, again, they didn't go back. They didn't really go with her either. So it was a weird time. It's been very weird in NXT. I think certain people are stability, like Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes. They're kind of the stable pieces of the company when it comes to NXT, but I can see that rough roads are ahead. Koshan R says, what are your thoughts on fans sucking up to Triple H like he's the center of the universe? Like, I'm glad Vince is gone, but Triple H isn't off the hook either. I think that basically people are just happy Vince is gone. You could have put anybody in there, and I think they would have been happy that Vince was gone. And that's just their opinion. But Triple H has never been that great as far as I'm concerned. Even when you go back to NXT, it was fine. But NXT was a good show because it was only 1 hour. It was 1 hour. The pay-per-views were about 2 hours. He got to load it up with stars. He got to do short storylines. The matches were decent. He had a good recruitment class too. So he had some good talent. But the show was shorter. Now Raw is 3 hours. He's got to book 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, 2 hours of NXT. You see how difficult it is. And you got to worry about selling out bigger buildings. It's not a tape show, so it's live. The crowd is a little bit more brutal, a little bit more casual. They're looking for something different than trying to play to a small sort of studio audience on a college campus. It's a lot different, and Triple H has some experience. Of course, he's been Vince's right-hand man for a long time, but he's always had a different vision of what wrestling is. And that different vision, I think, is eventually going to come out, and it's going to turn people off. But right now, he's been doing a good job because he's just been doing fan service. The fans want Cody to win. Cody wins. Fans want CM Punk back. CM Punk is back. You know, so for right now, he's not really messing around too much. But eventually, he's going to want to put his own pieces in place. He's going to want to make certain talent happy because people have made the decision to either not sign with AEW or come back to WWE because Triple H is in control. So he's going to have to make good with those talents. And eventually that's going to turn into a disaster. It's going to turn into a mess. And we'll see when it probably won't be anytime soon, but it'll be within the next 5 years, I'm sure. There was a question here about Tony Storm. It says, if Tony Storm has that character long, could you see Mr. McMahon push her to the moon? Don't forget Lacey Evans' character like Tony Storm in 1960. Well, there's a difference between Tony Storm and Lacey Evans. They both were meant to be like throwback characters, but if Tony Storm had had the same gimmick in WWE, she would never have gotten fired, or she never would have quit. They would have definitely found more to do with that gimmick, and that's part of the story too. Is people find their groove at different times of their life. Tony Storm was not ready when she was in WWE. You know, and you could tell because when she was in the early part of her AEW career, she was not really doing much of anything. She was world champion, but she wasn't really doing much of anything. And now she's found something. Within the last few months, Timeless Tony Storm has taken off. But it took a while for that to come out, you know. She's a very young lady. She was like 24, 25 when she first got signed to WWE. She was there for a few years. NXT UK, NXT, was only on SmackDown for a short amount of time. Then, you know, she went over to AEW. You know, they basically just let her do whatever she wanted. And she had no gimmick, no character. Then she was basically just a side piece with Paige. And it took for more time for that stuff to develop. If she had developed Timeless Tony Storm in NXT, I think Vince would have loved it. Especially from the way that she performs it. But, you know, there's a lot of throwback characters. They used to do the Vaudevillains. It was a similar thing. I think, you know, that would be an interesting coupling of Tony Storm with the Vaudevillains. That could have been fun, you know. Let's see. I wish Triple H cared about Bianca as much as Ripley. Well, that's an interesting thing. I wish he cared about Bianca as much as he seems to, you know, care about Damage Control. For fuck's sake. But I don't know. Like, he doesn't seem to find people who are really good and charismatic. Doesn't really find a place for them, you know, or they have their time and then they get pushed aside. I don't know. It's very weird. Light says Austin was the worst casualty of the new era. He was pinning Lashley and Rollins a year ago. Yeah, now he's in a Larry and Moe situation with Grayson Waller, which is embarrassing. Where they just basically get beat up every week. You know, getting smacked around and everything is kind of embarrassing. Kevin Abreu says, I really want to see Tiffany Stratton beat former NXT Women's Champion like Becky, Charlotte, Bayley, yada, yada, yada. But Shawn Michaels dropped the ball. I'm okay with her losing to Becky Lynch. I'm okay with her not beating Becky Lynch for the belt. I'm okay with Lyra Valkyria being the champion. What I'm not okay with is it hasn't gone anywhere that Becky Lynch had to be the one that beat Tiffany Stratton. You know, and I think the way she was booked in that Iron Survivor match showed us that Tiffany Stratton is not the person that that they think she is, or that we think she is, and that they're trying to move her out of the way. But I think with Charlotte's injury, now is a perfect time to move Tiffany Stratton into that spot. And I know she's not ready; she's only like 22 or something like that. But what are we waiting for? You know, like I don't understand. Why wait till she accumulates a ton of bumps and injuries before you realize that she's going to come along when it comes to promos, but she's got everything else. Her in-ring work is excellent. You know, she got a personality. She's got charisma. If you put her on TV with the right production, everything works out. If in reality, we should be talking about her as a favorite to win the Royal Rumble, you know, but I don't see that right now. Hopefully she's like one of the final four at least. But, we're in trouble. Does AAA need another developmental brand, not an NXT brand of its own? No, NXT is the developmental. That's how it is. What match you want to see? Gunther versus Brock Lesnar or Gunther versus Bobby Lashley? Of the two, I think both of them will be great. I think Brock will have more fun with Gunther because Gunther's a big guy. I think both matches will be pretty good. Loa says, I thought Grayson Waller would get a push. He shared moments with Edge and Cena. Then nothing after that. Yeah, it's about sustaining the push. Getting it started is one thing. Sustaining it is something completely different. They don't seem to have the ability to sustain that right now. I don't know. But I don't understand what they're doing with Grayson Waller either. Again, he's another NXT 2.0 guy that they push almost immediately. And he seems to really work out, but they don't seem to care, But I also understand that it's a weird time because the mid-card and the main event scene is on SmackDown is so sewed up in terms of nobody can displace Roman Reigns right now, and Logan Paul is on a run that you do want to monetize, and him having a championship and everything is perfectly fine. So you don't have a singles belt, but they should at least have tag titles on SmackDown so that a guy like Grayson Waller could have something. Can I see Triple H see Tiffany Stratton like a main event star? If he has eyeballs, he should be able to see it. Like, the only problem Tiffany Stratton has is her promo ability. Is that she sounds like she's cutting a promo. She doesn't sound like she's talking. The character is a little too heavy. I talked about that when it comes to Lacey Evans too. Is turn the gimmick down a little bit. The gimmick works, but you don't want to be like Repo Man. Like, Repo Man was cheesy, where it was all TV Serpentor laughing and hand rubbing and all the snake movements and like a rat and everything. Like that sucked. But well, you couldn't make Repo Man any good. But if you have a character and the character works, you don't need to overdo it. You don't need to do the puns and stuff like that. Like Lacey Evans, I think her whole gimmick worked out just fine. She just acted like a Southern Belle way too much. And I think the gimmick was too over the top. It was too heavy. I think her natural personality should have come out. And I think if you've seen like some of the clips of her on Chris Van Vliet, I think that straight shooter type of way that she speaks would have worked out a lot better. And I was right that if she was able to just go out there and talk in a way that wasn't unnecessarily gimmicked, it would have been fine. And I think Tiffany Stratton might be the same way. If she seems to be interested in studying the game, which I really like. But if she can tone down the character a little bit, come out with a little bit of the gimmick, but not so much of it, she'll be fine in terms of cutting promos. Again, Happy New Year for a lot of people who are just now coming in. We've been here for a while now. We talked about Kevin Dunn leaving WWE earlier, and how I think it was Mark Shapiro's fault. But it's also not that much of a bad thing that he's gone. A lot of the talent don't like him. A lot of the people who left don't like him. And Triple H's new regime, or Endeavor's new regime, however you want to put it, is finally starting to make some moves. And I made one prediction so far, that is Bruce Pritchard will not be in WWE by the end of 2024. I'll double down and say Michael Hayes probably won't be there either. So I'm pretty sure both of them are going to be gone by the end of the year, or one of them going to be gone. I'm going to stick to my guns. Both of them are going to be gone. You're probably going to hear that they're going to be a retirement or something like that, and basically just going to be them getting forced out. So, all right, let's talk about these free agents. There are a number of free agents loose now. At the beginning of the year, I've been paying attention to it. We're going to talk about some of these people. Most of them are male, obviously. and what they should do, or what I would like to see them do this year. So let's start with MJF. MJF is supposedly a free agent. I'll put that in quotations because it's a gimmick. MJF is going to stay in AEW. They just did an angle where they built up over time that he was going to feud with Adam Cole. What would be the purpose of going through all of that and he's not going to resign? What are you going to do on Dynamite if we're supposed to believe that MJF is no longer in AEW and he shows up on Raw tonight? Okay. What are you going to do on Dynamite then? What was the purpose of this whole devil angle? And how do you follow up on it now that MJF's gone? Do you think Tony Khan's a big idiot to invest how many months he put into that devil storyline and the feud between Adam Cole and MJF and the title run? He invested all of that into MJF just to let MJF walk away on January the 1st? No way. MJF staying in AEW. I'm not a fool, and you shouldn't be a fool either. Doesn't matter if they took him off the roster list. He's not going anywhere. MJF is in AEW. He re-signed the contract. And if he hasn't re-signed the contract, he's got some kind of crazy extension where I think, what was this with Kenny Omega, where Kenny Omega's contract had expired, but they had a 1-year option on him, like he was a football player or something like that. So he had to stick around for another year before they re-signed him. I'm pretty sure MJF's not going anywhere anytime soon. All right, so Andrade El Idolo apparently is also now a free agent. Everybody expects him to go back to WWE. I almost expect him to be on SmackDown. Maybe not Raw. Now, it would be nice for him to be on Raw. But I think that part of what people have been whispering is that he's going to go hang out with Zelina again. And that the pairing of Zelina and Andrade worked in NXT. And there's an opportunity there for Zelina to recruit Andrade for the LWO and to feud with Santos Escobar. Now that Ray's injured and Carlito has vanished. Wait, where did Carlito go? I don't know. Of course, a lot of people have said, like, you don't need to have all the Mexicans and Hispanics in one thing. Which is true, you don't. Some people have even suggested that maybe Andrade should go back to NXT. He's already done that. You know, my thing is he should probably be on Raw as being, the Hispanic star of Monday Night Raw. Because Raw doesn't have one. Like Raw doesn't have any main level Hispanic star. So let Andrade be the guy on Raw. Or if you want to bring him to SmackDown to team up with Zelina, then maybe somebody has to leave. Maybe you move Carlito from SmackDown to Raw. But they got Dragon Lee on SmackDown too. So you have a lot of options with luchadors that Andrade can work with on SmackDown. And it seems to me that it would really work that way. And nobody seems to doubt that he's going to go back to WWE. And I don't doubt it either. So I expect to see Andrade as a free agent show up tonight. Maybe they try to talk him into signing with Raw, and then maybe he makes a decision to sign to SmackDown because CM Punk went to Raw. So now they're going to do this whole thing with Andrade. I think NXT would be a good option for him, but I just don't see the need for him to go backwards. So I'm gonna go with either SmackDown or Raw, and I think he should probably be on SmackDown. But I don't really like the LWO thing. Yeah, Andrade doesn't need to work, right? But the thing is, because Charlotte is injured, it would make sense for him to be on SmackDown if Charlotte was on SmackDown because it is what it is. But now that she's injured, you can put him on Raw and have him work on Raw, and you can have Andrade versus Gunther. You can do that. Maybe have Andrade be the guy who beats him for the title. That could work. That would be a huge push for Andrade, and it would be worth it. As a guy who has a lot of experience but still pretty young, I think Andrade is like 36 or something like that. So he's not like an old guy. It will work out great. So I'm not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. But I think that if Charlotte was wrestling, Charlotte was on SmackDown, it would make sense for him to be on SmackDown. I would, if it was possible, put Charlotte in Andrade's corner. or have that schism where Zelina is his manager, but Charlotte is his wife, and they have issues about that. That could be fun too. That could be a fun little storyline. At least until Malachi Black becomes free, and then you could do a mixed tag match with the two of them. All right, so Mustafa Ali is a free agent still. I'm surprised he hasn't shown up in AEW yet. Uh, I get the feeling that he's probably better off in Impact. You know, pretty much everybody from this point until maybe for like the next 3 or 4 people, you're probably better off with them in Impact. So that would be Mustafa Ali, Elias, QT Marshall, Sean Spears. They're probably all better off in Impact. I do not want Sean Spears and QT Marshall anywhere near WWE. I can see them trying to do a Nightmare Family stable because these guys are friends with Cody, and that would get a lot of heat with me because I hate both of these guys. But it wouldn't get the right kind of heat because I legitimately don't want to see them. You know, they have Good Brothers heat with me. But I think they will work fine in Impact. So QT Marshall and Sean Spears will be great in Impact. I don't want anything to do with them in WWE. But Cody's got some stroke in the company. Maybe he, makes some phone calls and he gets his boys a job. Much how AJ Styles got the Good Brothers back in there, and they suck too. It's. I don't like that idea. I'm trying not to depress myself by thinking about QT Marshall being in WWE because he sucks so bad. Ugh. And Sean Spears is the shits. Ugh. But I can see also that maybe the decision to create like a Nightmare Family stable, because that seemed like what he wanted to do in AEW was create a Nightmare Family stable, and it would make sense for him to have a Nightmare Family stable once he's the champion. Much like like the Four Horsemen or something like that. As much as I talk about it, the more depressed I get. All right, ugh. But yeah, Mustafa Ali is probably better off in Impact. I don't see him really going anywhere in AEW. I don't see AEW really putting the effort in to put him over and make him a bigger and better star. Complex Gentlemen, so basically the story they did with Miro and Andrade, except they switch out the wives. Yeah, I like that story. I thought the story was fine. The issue was the execution. Andrade wasn't staying, so they basically used it to write him off. But him being Lana being his manager, I couldn't remember what her fucking name was. Lana being his manager was good. But they had dropped the ball with Andrade from the beginning, for Christ's sake. The Vicky Guerrero thing, I thought it could work out because Vicky could get heat, but it didn't go anywhere, which is unfortunate. It keeps being the case with AEW where they'll start something and then they'll stop it, or they'll find some reason to drop the ball. And it becomes, Johnny don't want to do no jobs. Oh, goodness. It's good to have them as extra jobbers in WWE. I don't even want them as jobbers. They have no personality. I hate them. I don't like them. Like, jobbers still need to have a purpose. They still need to have, personality. I don't see that with, QT Marshall and Sean Spears. Oh my God. Ew. Yeah, they did have Chavo Guerrero with Andrade. God, they dropped the ball so many times. Chavo, I don't think that was going to work though. Chavo doesn't have the charisma to make it work. Andrade needs to have a woman with him. Like some guys are, you could put a male manager with them and it'll work out. But Andrade is one of those guys that females work better. So Leo Rush is also a free agent. He apparently is now mature enough that he wants to stay in one place. I know a couple of years ago it was talks of him going back to WWE, but he wanted to work New Japan, and he wanted to do that. And then he started saying that he was planning to sign a long-term contract in New Japan, and then he got injured. And now he's basically saying that he wants to work a long-term deal. He's almost 30 now, so he's not as young. Well, he's still a very young guy. But he was very young when he was in WWE. He's very small, of course. I think New Japan would be great for him, but I really liked and thought that they barely scratched the surface of what Lio Rush could do in Impact. He was in Impact for a cup of coffee. He became the X Division champion, and everything was going smooth, and he got hurt. So while AEW would be a good option for him, Lio Rush can it doesn't matter that he's small when it comes to AEW. He can cut promos. He has charisma. It'd be a good roster for him to succeed in. But how? I hate to put it this way, but how do you really differentiate between him and Swerve Strickland? You know, he's basically Swerve on a small level. Both of them are wannabe rappers. Not that, Swerve uses rap in his gimmick, but both of them are kind of the same kind of character, Lio Rush in AEW was a disaster, though. What was that? LBO Leo? Oh, that was a disaster. That sucked. But Lio Rush, I like him in WWE. I thought he was great there. I would not be mad if he came back. I think he works an interesting style, but he's just so damn small that, what can you really do with him? He's more charismatic than Ricochet, which helps a lot, but WWE already has Ricochet. Ricochet's a little bit older, too. I just think that Lio Rush would be so much better, and he'd become a much bigger star in Impact. I think the opportunities for him in Impact are limitless. I think he has a ceiling in AEW. He has a ceiling in WWE. If he wants to go back to Japan, that would be great, too. It just would mean I wouldn't see him that much. Same thing with if he was to go to MLW. Even though I think MLW's roster is better than Impact's. Impact seems to care about their roster again. They're supposed to be bringing in the grizzled young veterans. They suck, though. They're like super boring. But they have a very high opinion of themselves, which guys should. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but they ain't that good. I never heard of them before they got signed to NXT UK, and I haven't heard about anything they've done since, except the Impact was going to bring them in for that Hard to Kill pay-per-view. So that's fine, I guess. But so Grizzly Young Veterans and Impact, it fits. They don't have any personality, That seems to be their favorite in Impact. They keep signing fucking Eddie Edwards and those tier guys, But Lio Rush, yeah, I think Lio Rush could be world champion in Impact. I don't see. There's no good reason why he couldn't be. Of course, the big one is Alexander Hammerstone, a guy who was the main event star in MLW. He's finally a free agent, apparently. There's been some rumors of him, possibly going to AEW. There's I think that he's Wardlow 2.0 in AEW. That's just a fact. In AEW, he's Wardlow 2.0. He's a jacked dude. He's got some personality. We're not sure in terms of his promo ability, but he's athletic. But AEW doesn't have any interest in pushing him. They have, at his age, I think Hammerstone is like 35 or something like that. He should try to get into WWE, and with his look and all that stuff, if Vince was in control, I would say Hammerstone would be a slam dunk in WWE. But with Triple H, I'm not sure. He might make a great splash on NXT. But again, the guy's 35 or something like that, almost 40, halfway to 40, more than halfway to 40. Well, shit. Tiffany Stratton's halfway to 40. What I mean is, like, he's almost there, between 30 and 40. And NXT, for a short cup of coffee, might be great for him. And I think he can actually get a lot of exposure in NXT. If you want to make NXT a place where some established talent rub shoulders with recruits, I think Alexander Hammerstone and actually Camille is another great one where she might be good in NXT. Camille is also a free agent. She's leaving the NWA. She was NWA Women's World Champion for, I don't know, like 2 years or something like that. Then she dropped it to some really young girl named Kenzie Page, who seems to be like fresh out of high school. Like, I don't know. I don't know what is up with that. That's the weirdest thing about NWA right now is the women's division all seem to be children. Like, they all seem to be like straight up fresh out of high school. I don't get, like, they got to be like 21 or something like that. Way too young to be like a world champion, but whatever. The girl's not terrible. She's just very young. But Camille, Camille was great when they were doing the Camille Brickhouse thing, and she was the silent, almost China-like figure behind Nick Aldis for like the first few years of NWA. She was great. Her character started to bloom a little bit later. She started talking a little bit more as we started hearing that country fried accent, which gave me Lacey Evans 2.0 vibes, except for I think this is how she really talks. Near the end of her NWA career, she was actually cutting promos and doing some good stuff with her husband. I like Camille. She's tall. She's athletic. I think that she has more experience now than when she was the world champion. I don't know how old she is. I think she's pretty young. I'm not sure if she's early 30s or late 20s or something like that. I think an NXT deal will be fantastic for her. I think that she's another one that could, if you get her in the system, it could really, really work. I think Camille in WWE would be tremendous. I don't know how I would utilize her, but I think you put her in NXT and you put her near the top of the card, it could work. She can talk. It's just that she's country as hell. And Vince McMahon, Vince cares about accents, but Triple H doesn't seem to. So if Camille could get a job in WWE, that would be excellent. I would really welcome Camille in WWE. Deonna Purrazzo is leaving Impact. She's also a free agent. Deonna Purrazzo apparently moved to Florida so she could work in NXT, and then, of course, she got canned. She ended up working in Impact. There seems to be a lot of whispering that she's going to end up going back to WWE, and that Triple H is, interested in her, and that he liked her from the beginning, and cutting her was maybe a Vince McMahon decision during the pandemic. Of course, she went to Impact, became world champion, and she was tremendous, having really good matches in Impact. To me, Deonna Purrazzo is what Triple H wants Shayna Baszler to be. She has more charisma. Shayna Baszler just doesn't have any charisma. I like the idea that she's just going to be like a bruiser. I'm talking about Shayna Baszler, but I'm talking about technically proficient with more of a flair. I like Deonna Purrazzo for that. I just don't think that women's wrestling is valued in AEW as much as it should be. I think that if Deonna Purrazzo and Serena Deeb got a chance to go in there and really do some stuff, they could have some really fun matches. I think that Deonna Purrazzo could have fun matches with Toni Storm. I think she could really do some interesting stuff with like Chris Statlander. There's a lot that she can do in AEW, but the company is not that dedicated to the idea. And I think their lack of dedication to women's wrestling, I wouldn't suggest any female go to AEW. I just would not suggest it, unless you're Japanese. So if you're like Julia, the young lady who apparently is also a free agent, and she's been weighing her options, like if she was to go to AEW, that would be fine, I think, because AEW doesn't seem to be biased against Japanese female wrestlers. But when it comes to Americans and stuff like that, I don't think they're really valued in AEW, really. So maybe Deonna Purrazzo should probably either go to NXT or go to Japan. She's already done everything she can do in Impact. So either she should go to Japan or she should try to make her way in NXT. I think she could do a good job on the main roster too. Just AEW doesn't give a fuck about women's wrestling. Black Feather Knight says she should stop saying limb by limb. Are you talking about Shayna Baszler? Limb by limb. God. Look, I don't dislike Shayna Baszler. It's just that I just think she came into WWE when she was almost 40. She was like 38 or something like that when she came in. No, I don't know. Was she like that old when she came in? But she didn't come in as a young, athletic, prospect. She came in as a grizzled veteran. And it was like when Dan Severn came into WWE. It's not the worst thing in the world. But clearly they weren't being brought in to be like the top star. Like building around them is not what you should do. Shayna Baszler reminds me a lot of like Timothy Thatcher. Like Drew Gulak. Technically proficient. We know she spent her whole career wanting to be an MMA fighter, which is why she came to WWE and was, so much older and more grizzled. But I don't hate Shayna Baszler. I just think that her style is very mid-card. Can she become the world champion? Maybe. If you want to have a situation where she's a Chris Benoit of the women's division, yeah. Or a Dean Malenko of the women's division, that works out. But her being like a top star like she was in NXT, like, no. No. AEW has no idea what they're doing with their women's division. Yeah, I don't think they care that much about it. The only reason Toni Storm is a champion right now is because people actually care about Toni Storm. Other than that, I don't think they care too much about their women's division at all. And I think the fact that Chris Statlander has been in AEW for 4 years and has only moved up because Jade Cargill was leaving is the only thing that shows you that they care at all about what's going on here. I don't think they give a shit. I think the women's division is secondary to them. But it's a shame because what they're doing with Julia Hart is actually good in AEW. I don't dislike what they're doing with Julia. She's very young, but she's got something going, And I just like I was talking about Kenzie Page earlier. That's because she's young and somewhat inexperienced. If she shows flashes that she might be good at something, stick with it, because you let the young people make their mistakes now, they'll get better. As opposed to, well, they're young and they're green, we're going to make them go in there and take a bunch of bumps and, injure themselves and tear up their knees and their back and everything, and they'll just be stuck in the same place for 10 years. Like, that sucks. That's what happened with Jeff Hardy in WWE. He's stuck in the same place for years and years and years, tore his fucking body up. And by the time he became really a guy that you can bank on and push, he was already beat the hell up. He already got his painkiller addiction and all that stuff going. It's like, put them on the right track while they're young. That's the same thing when it comes to like Austin Theory. Like, if they show some kind of prodigious ability, help them along. You don't have to make them world champion immediately, but help them along, keep them on TV, keep them relevant, continue building them. AEW won't even do that. Velvet, I think Red Velvet's been there since the beginning, and she is in no different situation now than she was when she started, when she was getting beat up by Brandy Rose every week. That's unfortunate. Like, if your career really is a hamster on a wheel like that, I understand why you would quit. That's a dead-end job, bro. People used to say WWE was like that. For some guys, it was. Like, for Dolph Ziggler, it was. For Mustafa Ali, it was. You was in the same place for 4 or 5 years, or they jerking you around. They push you up a little bit and pull you back down, push you up, pull you back down. I get it why you would quit and want to get out of there. It's a dead-end job at that point. But if you're young, it might not be the worst thing in the world because you're showing some ability and we're just waiting for you to break through, or we're waiting for an opportunity for you. But when it comes to AEW, man, it just seems like dudes just don't move. Like Top Flight, they've been there for like 2 or 3 years. Yes, injuries, we get it. but they just been in the same place, having the same matches, cutting the same promos, everything for years. It's like, what on earth? And that guy from Private Party, whatever his name is, and nobody has ever even mentioned what happened to his partner. What happened to that guy? I never heard if he's hurt. I don't know if he's dead. I don't know what's going on with that guy. He disappeared. And Private Party, they've been in AEW since the beginning, going nowhere fast. You know, it's like eventually you gotta cut bait, man, and gotta go somewhere else. That's kind of how I feel about Trey Miguel in Impact. Like, he's been there for how many years and he's still not a main event wrestler? It's like the main event in Impact is so weak. It's pathetic. The main event in Impact is absolutely pathetic. And we can't, take a young guy like Trey Miguel who's been on your roster all this time and he's starting to develop and we can't move him up the card? That sucks. I felt the same way about Ace Austin before they gave him this like tag team thing with Chris Bay. It seemed like they had him in a holding pattern. Now it seems like they're going to do the Rascals thing in Impact because they brought in Myron Reed and Zachary Wentz. And so now Trey Miguel's got, his friends there. Even better to actually start pushing him as a single star. They'll see if they actually do it, which they probably won't. Even the Elite felt stagnant. Yeah, the Elite aren't even going anywhere. Like, Hangman Page had that one really interesting storyline where, they built up his internal feud with the Elite, and he hasn't done anything since. Even when he became world champion, he really didn't do anything. He really wasn't wasn't nothing special. I don't find anything special about Hangman Page anyway. But when you look at the Elite, they don't have anything going. And this is where you know that, they're not character forward. I think I made a video a while back that the Elite needed to change things up. And I think the Young Bucks going on break was a great move for the company. They needed to leave. But they need to come back different. They need to come back with a different personality, different personas, different presentation, wrestle different. They need to go and refresh. Not just come back and, oh, you guys got sick of us, so we left. But now we're back, so you should love us again. Like, I don't think so, my guy. They need to take, like, Kenny Omega even did something different when he did the belt collector thing when he was with Don Callis. That was interesting. That was different. Young Bucks, Hangman Page, they suck. They suck really bad. Humble 85, include Ricky Starks in the stop-start pushes. Yeah, oh yeah. It's been a disaster when it comes to Ricky Starks. I mean, everybody recognizes that. He's been a hamster on a wheel for a while. Very unfortunate. And his run has been snake bit. Anytime it looks like he's about to move up, something bad happens that has nothing to do with him. CM Punk gets fired. Kenny Omega gets diverticulitis. It's like, goddamn. It's very unfortunate. But I think if you look at the Lucha Brothers, they're another one that there's nothing going in AEW. There's literally nothing. They just keep introducing new luchadors. Phoenix was one of the most phenomenal singles wrestlers in AEW when he first got there. I mean, he was tremendous. They was comparing him to Rey Mysterio. And then he kept getting injured. They never really pushed him as a singles star. Then he finally won a belt. It was by accident because Moxley got a concussion. And they immediately did nothing with him having that belt. And it all began when they won the tag team titles. And it was obvious from that point they were not going to try to make the Lucha Brothers stars. They put them on Rampage, and they were defending the belts on Rampage when nobody watched that show. And that was unfortunate. So the Lucha Brothers are in a dead-end position. There's so many people that are nowhere fast in AEW. And that's why the product is dying. Because when you look at the roster, you don't really see much movement. And part of this is because, they keep creating new titles, and then the champions are champions forever. Like, the Acclaimed have been trios champions forever. I don't even know when the last time they defended them. They just have them. Orange Cassidy is the international champion. He just has the belt. It's not hot. It doesn't mean anything. They created a new title just for Eddie Kingston. It doesn't really mean anything because how is it any different than the other belts that are on the show? Like it's stagnant. They needed something. And you need to have more than one hit. Like WWE, they were doing a good job with just the bloodline. But then you continue to work to build up other things. So that other things become popular and hot too. And as much as MJF was special on the AEW roster, they didn't bother to heat up anybody else. When they made that weird decision to have Orange Cassidy lose the belt to Jon Moxley, it was supposed to be like this is the culmination of all of Orange Cassidy's hard work. He got the main event of pay-per-view with Jon Moxley. Like, he lost. And then, instead of trying to build a new star out of this whole thing, it was, okay, Orange Cassidy is a star, but now Orange Cassidy has a belt, and he works Rampage. And that's it. It's dumb. It's just real dumb. Young Wolf 34. AEW has too many similar wrestlers that don't stand out. Yeah, that is true. A lot of them are high-flying mid-carders. Action Andretti, I mean, his gimmick is that he drinks water really fast. I don't even understand why that is even a thing. They need a C2 for women. We elevate new stars and show commitment to the division, having 3 women's matches on each show. They'd also kill their ratings because look, the reason why the C2 did not completely kill everything is because of the people they put in it. They put Danielson in it. Claudio was in it. People that folks want to see. Jon Moxley was in it. Jay White was in it. If you to do a C2 for the women, who would be in it that would keep people's attention? That's not a rhetorical question. Like, who do you put in it? Literally, that just wouldn't kill the audience. Like, they don't put any effort into these people. Even somebody who is talented, like Serena Deeb, she doesn't have a strong personality. People are not going to go out of their way to make sure they see that Serena Deeb match. Even somebody who has physical charisma like Sky Blue, she has no personality. Chris Statlander is a physical marvel. She can actually work. Again, not much in the way of personality, no storylines. Willow Nightingale is very likable. Interesting style. No personality. I mean, no storyline. She's got personality, though. I will say that. I was wrong saying she had no personality. Red Velvet, again, going nowhere fast. Mariah May, we don't know that much about her yet. Unless you saw her in Japan, which I didn't, so I don't know anything about her. Anna Jay, C Sky Blue. Who do you got? Who do you put in that position? Riho? Hikaru Shida, who we've seen 100 times. Nyla Rose, who was awful, by the way. On top of other issues with Nyla Rose, what I'm not going to say, but it's obvious. Saraya, who's got a neck made of club crackers. Like, who do you put in this position to be the top stars of that division? You got nobody. That's years and years of neglect. Maybe you decide all of a sudden, we're going to put Britt Baker on there. Okay. Well, she's won. So, out of this whole tournament, you're going to have one person that you should really care about? Just years and years of neglect. And it sucks. Bro, how long until the SJW, AEW locker room just believes all women and they refuse to work with Jericho? Well, Jericho hasn't been accused of anything. That's the weird situation is. A lot of people are like, Jericho did this, Jericho did that. It's like, okay, well, what's the allegation against Jericho? And nobody hasn't told me who the person who made this John Ferris, the guy who was a Twitter account. He's just that. There's a picture of a guy. You go to that Twitter, there's a picture of a guy who wrote out 4 years ago what allegedly occurred with Kylie Ray, and there was no follow-up. Nobody has done any investigation into who that guy is, how he knows this. Is he a lawyer? If he was a lawyer, I would say maybe he could be a lawyer in the Chicago area. Maybe he knows her. Maybe he knows somebody about this. Nope. We don't know anything about that guy. We don't know anything about this story. So to me, it's a dead issue until we get more information. Stone Mexican guy is not incorrect. Complex gentlemen, if they can sign some big names like Julia and Mercedes Monet, it would slap. Now I was saving Mercedes for last because I was actually going to talk about Mandy Rose maybe coming back too. I know she's not really thinking that much about wrestling. I would suggest she does come back, but I don't think she fits Triple H's vision of pro wrestling. But Mercedes, of course, is the biggest free agent out there. And a lot of the AEW fans are kind of like, oh yeah, we got Mercedes, she's going to come in. That's going to be great. If she manages to show up on Dynamite, that's going to be excellent for their company. But AEW does not care about the women's division. They don't care. And if you think that all of a sudden they will care because they got Mercedes, nope. We thought they were going to care because they signed Paige, Saraya. We thought they were going to care then. They didn't. Like, if the only way Mercedes can matter is if she forces this company to care about the women's division. If she can force the company to care about the women's division, then maybe. Other than that, I don't see how she's going to make a huge difference, really. I know she doesn't care. She's just looking at the money issue. But Tony Khan is not investing in the women's division. He hasn't seemed like he's been that interested in investing in the women's division. But Mercedes is better off going back to WWE and being Sasha Banks again. It's probably better for her pocketbook and for her legacy. But if she wants to go to AEW, I'm fine with that. It's just she's going to have to deal with her opponents being half-baked and her angles not really getting over. You know, people are going to talk about how big a star she is and all that shit, but ultimately, it takes two to tango. Who is she going to work with? She's going to be able to make some money with, outside of working with Tony. You know, once she works with Tony Storm, then what? You know, Britt Baker, okay, then what? You know, like, you got two people for her to work with, and then she's floundering. So we're in an interesting situation. I guess Thunder Rosa. I forgot Thunder Rosa's back, but you really don't have much of anything there. And the fact is, they just don't give a shit. You know, it's literally they don't care. You know, like literally they don't care. So spending that money just to get her will just be basically, we took her from WWE. We're trying to show our audience that we care. We're trying to show our audience that we're trying in terms of how to keep the business upcoming. You know, Tony Khan wants to be active in the free agent market. Like, yeah, that's great. But are you going to be active in the creative in terms of making sure everybody who is brought in is utilized correctly? Oh my goodness. Her name is Mercedes begging for Monet. JS says, am I the only one who's never heard of Julia until a couple of months ago? No. I was familiar with her to some degree because I followed a Stardom account on the internet. Like, I follow it on Twitter, and I think I'm subscribed to it on YouTube, even though I don't watch the videos. But I may see a clip here and there. That's about the most I've ever seen of her, you know? So I don't know, you know, why would she be so great? I don't know how she's different from every other Japanese female wrestler. So I don't know what to tell you. Woke. I'm glad Joe finally the top guy. If MJF takes the belt from Adam Cole, will start leave Swerve. Hold on. If MJF takes the belt from Adam Cole, where will that leave Swerve or MJF's championship reign? Well, I think we're looking at the situation now where Joe is the champion. He's going to be champion for a while. Maybe they have Joe drop it to Swerve, and that seems to be the the move. MJF is going to be moving away from the title and doing a personal feud with Adam Cole, which could work because that means that you have a hot underneath angle and you have to get the world title picture hot. Putting your most over guy in the world title picture and Swerve works. I don't think you have Joe drop it to Swerve immediately, though. I think you wait a little while. The first pay-per-view is in March, isn't it? Maybe Double or Nothing. You'll have Swerve win the belt there. And then, because I know they're probably going to have Will Ospreay win it at Wembley. And Double or Nothing is in June? And Swerve being champion from June to August doesn't seem right, especially since he's the most over guy on the roster. But that becomes a real issue because you promising guys or trying to get people to believe that something is going to happen without making sure that the ground is set for it is very destructive. Basically everybody thinking that Will Ospreay is going to win the title at Wembley. All right, that's fine. But Will Ospreay is not the most over guy on the roster. Swerve is. So now you're in a situation where if you put the belt, you put the belt on Joe. Just say Joe is a transitional champion. He drops it to Swerve. Well, Swerve is going to be one of your top guys. Even if Will Ospreay is going to be over in Wembley and over enough to win the belt, is he over enough in the United States to draw audience, TV ratings, etc., etc.? We have not proven that yet. So we're in a situation where you shouldn't be making promises to guys that they're going to be world champion in the biggest arena in their home country and all that horse shit. And you don't set a benchmark. Like, he should have to sell a certain amount of T-shirts and for starters, he should be put in a position where he had to sell tickets. Okay? He should be a draw without it being Wembley. Like, one of the things that you want to do is you don't want to just say, well, CM Punk's going to sell out his night of WrestleMania. It's like, well, yeah, because he's CM Punk and he's been around forever. But 10, 15 years ago, could you trust CM Punk to sell out WrestleMania on his name alone? No. So you wouldn't make a promise to him that he's going to win the belt in his hometown at WrestleMania unless you could show that he's going to be drawing tickets and ratings and stuff. You make sure that the business is there first before you give him the belt. Because otherwise, you're screwing up what you got currently. And Swerve is the guy that you got right now that probably should be your top guy. And why ruin that by having him drop the belt to Will Ospreay when Will Ospreay is not going to be drawing your TV ratings or anything like that? It's just pointless. And plus, you're a American wrestling company that occasionally does shows in Europe. So I don't know. If you were a major European wrestling brand, I would see why you would want to have Will Ospreay as your champion. But you're a major American wrestling touring brand. You have to start drawing in Chicago and Seattle and Portland and yada yada yada. And I don't know that Will Ospreay is a bigger star than Swerve in those places. But of course, Samoa Joe, at his age, with his history of injuries and concussions and stuff, he's not your long-term decision, to be a star. He's your guy now. I don't know about for the long term. I don't know how long the long term is. Timu says, I feel like they could have done the double angle and have Swerve be the one to work with the double and beat MJF for the title. That could have worked out. I still think it should have been Wardlow who's going to be part of this angle. Wardlow being part of the angle really threw me for a loop. Like, I knew the Kingdom was there. That was obvious. But Wardlow being part of this angle and not being the major singles guy in it, literally when he squashed MJF on television or pay-per-view, is mind-boggling. Not even boggling, bottling, like Coca-Cola bottle. I don't understand how you have this guy. He's not the one who beat MJF for the belt. It's stupid. Um, do you think Jay White will ever win the world belt? Not this year. Not this year. Probably not next year. Depends. I think if they wanted to put the belt on Jay White, they should have done it. But I don't think it's going to happen. He seems to me like he's going to end up being like a long-term international champion or something like that. But Swerve and Joe are heels. Well, yes, but AEW fans don't care about that. They don't care about it. They'll just turn Swerve babyface. They don't care about that. Enter the new year with something fresh. I think that if they manage to get Mercedes, that will be the one thing that they're entering the new year with something fresh. The problem is how they're going to maintain it. That shit's going to be dead by March. Because if she signs to AEW this week, they're going to have about a month or two before people will start, okay, it's WrestleMania season. What are you going to do with this new talent that you got that is going to be big in comparison? Like, it's not going to be as big as WrestleMania, obviously, but it actually helps WWE in some cases if she shows up on Dynamite this week, because then nobody's going to be looking for her at the Royal Rumble. If she doesn't show up this week, and well, let's say if she doesn't show up this week, she needs to show up before the Royal Rumble. Because if she shows up after the Royal Rumble, then that's going to be a very interesting piece of information. But I think people will lose interest the longer it takes for her to show up. But you got to have the creative together. Your creative is not right, whether it's right now or otherwise. Why did the devil attack Jay White? I don't know. Why did the devil attack the Acclaimed? He's buddies. They were buddies with MJF. I don't know. I don't know why the devil attacked Jay White. Are we going to do something about that? Is Jay White going to wrestle Adam Cole? Are we going to have a Bullet Club Gold versus the Kingdom level feud? Can Adam Cole even wrestle? Which I'm pretty sure he can't. So that means that Wardlow and the Kingdom are going to be wrestling Bullet Club Gold, which basically would be Roderick Strong in the Kingdom. Oh God. Oh boy, Roderick Strong and Jay White. That'll put butts in seats. Will Ospreay can't move tickets for TNA even this month. I'm guessing you mean can't, because he certainly is not. Yeah, Will Ospreay and Okada are both on the TNA shows, and they're not working out. That's why I say like the idea of Will Ospreay being your top guy from like August forward is kind of goofy, because I'm not seeing that he's a major draw in the United States. I haven't seen any evidence of that. And that's what I'm looking forward to when it comes to being who's a world champion or whatever. You can make whoever you want the world champion. Wrestling is predetermined. The issue is it legitimate? Is it going to put butts in the seats, or is tickets going to be sold or whatever? And I'm not seeing that when it comes to AEW. I'm not seeing that people are going to flock to see Will Ospreay. They need something hot. They need something that matters, and they don't have anything that matters. Same thing with MLW. MLW, they just got this nice little influx of cash from WWE. It needs something that works. They managed to get Richard Holiday back, which rules, because Richard Holiday is very good. Unfortunately, Richard Holiday was not signed by WWE, I guess. Impact also did not try to get him, but he would have been so good as an Impact World Champion or something. I don't understand how MLW keeps getting in there and getting decent talent, and Impact is missing them, and AEW is missing them. Like, how? Like, I don't get that. Like, major talents, for political decisions, not signing Riddle. I guess Impact is going to make that decision. It's a very progressive company. Riddle was accused of a lot of stuff. AEW, I think that they probably would not care if Riddle was a bigger star, but he's not. So they kind of just like, oh, okay, well. we'll let MLW have him, but MLW don't give a fuck at all, you know, so they went and signed him. Not saying that he would have made a huge difference in AEW, but still, a place like Impact just not being very active when it comes to free agents is a disaster. Because they certainly need a better roster. Holy shit, they need a better roster. I mean, that's the number one problem when it comes to me and TNA. TNA Impact, let's say, is you got guys on that roster that I cannot stand. I mean, a lot of them have been there forever. I'm just saying forever, like Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, Moose, Eddie Edwards. Like, oh my God. Like, you don't know what year it is when you watch an Impact show. PCO, it's like, oh God, ugh. When they got that nice little influx of talent from Ring of Honor, I was actually surprised. I was like, okay, this, opportunity is here. But even if it was just like Matt Taven, it would have been better than what they had. And I hate to say that because I dislike Matt Taven a lot. But at least it was somebody different, for Christ's sake. But now it's the same motherfuckers, And I think Ring of Honor, Tony Khan's Ring of Honor, is doing a lot of damage to wrestling too, because there's a lot of people on that roster that probably would be an Impact if they weren't signed to it, So whatever, it is what it is, though. Do I think it's a good idea to have Collision on Saturday? Well, they could move Collision to a different day. Or they can move it to earlier in the day. I mean, just imagine if Collision was sort of their lead-in to the pay-per-view. And I didn't understand why they didn't do that. Like when it comes to the pay-per-view, they just didn't have one. They just didn't have an episode of Collision. But they had a 2-hour pre-show on YouTube. It's like, how about you just have Collision? Have Collision at 6. And then the pay-per-view at 8. Why not? I think that people should, and I think wrestling companies need to get out of everything needs to start at 8 o'clock. Why not have Collision on at 6 o'clock on a Saturday? Why not? Why compete against primetime football games or people going out for dinner at 8 o'clock at night or going on dates or whatever? Have Collision at 6. People can go to dinner or whatever afterwards. Try the matinee version. I know it's probably not the same money, but you never know what you could do just by playing around with your start times and stuff. Timu Anderson likes TNA the most, but Josh Alexander's headgear looks like some protective gear and aggressively autistic. Yeah, I hate that. I hate his headgear. I understand why he wears them, but I cannot stand it. It looks JoJo too, as Conan says. Conan says things look JoJo. I agree with that. I really wish he wouldn't wrestle in that thing. I wish he had a different persona too, for Christ's sake. Him just being, I'm a wrestling wrestler guy. It's very boring. Super boring. What happened to AEW house shows? They weren't making any money, so they stopped doing them. And also, I think a lot of the wrestlers didn't want to do them, so they stopped doing them. I think, the house rule show, they was losing money on them. Talent didn't want to do it, so they basically just walked away from it. You need to bring back Saturday morning wrestling shows. I think if you're going to tape a show, it should be on Saturday morning. Why not? Rampage being on a Friday night at 10 o'clock is stupid. That's just pure dumbass stuff. Nobody's going to watch that. And I think it's been proven that it's not going to be watched. Since it's already taped, find a different time and place for it. Maybe a Sunday morning. Sunday morning at 11 or something like that. Who knows? Just try something else. Maybe move it to 8 o'clock. Maybe move Rampage to go head to head with SmackDown for a little while. But it's already taped. I don't know. Maybe I would just basically eliminate Rampage because Collision does the same thing Rampage does. There's no real difference between the two shows. So it is what it is. If Rampage was going to be like your developmental brand, and you're going to say, yes, we're going to use Ring of Honor shows and stuff like that on Rampage, I think that may get more people to watch it. But Rampage just feels like the runoff from Dynamite. You know, it just feels like the people who weren't important enough to be on Dynamite end up on Rampage. It doesn't feel like an important show to watch. And then nobody ever misses anything on that show. AEW need a performance center. We said that for years. I've said it for years, and they ridiculed it. They ridiculed the idea in 2019, 2020, 2021. They think they got their right idea. They thought they were making stars. You know, Britt Baker was talking about, oh, you don't need a warehouse full of talent, blah, blah, blah. They don't. Cody tried to have the Nightmare facility or whatever. What do they call it? The Nightmare Factory. So people have been pushing the idea that AEW needs some kind of training facility because of the botches and how, you know, green the talent looked. But they're just not doing it. You know, Tony Khan got money. He can do it. He don't want to do it. You know, it's that simple. It's very unfortunate. All right. This thing has gone on longer than I thought it would. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by in the middle of the afternoon on a Monday. Thank everybody for your time. My tablet's about to die. So it's going to be the last couple of statements, and then we're going to get out of here. Cody dissed the Performance Center back in 2019. Yeah, a lot of people have been dissing the Performance Center. A lot of wrestling fans dissed the Performance Center. That's because the dirt sheets have started that. But the NFL has a combine. Each team has a practice squad. They have recruits there. They have people that they brought in that, you know, signed it off waivers or whatever. Every major wrestling company should have a developmental program. TNA should have one. I don't know why they stopped working with OVW. I know OVW kind of wants to be competitors, but OVW is small. They also just got bought again, by the way. I think somebody else just bought a piece of OVW. So it seems to me that the Netflix show ended up doing wonders for OVW because they're starting selling out their arenas. They just started really doing a lot of television. EC3 is working there a lot. It seems like they're working very closely with NWA. But TNA should have kept OVW as its developmental. WWE, of course, has NXT. They, of course, do stuff with Reality of Wrestling. But AEW, they certainly should have had some kind of partnership. That should be the point of Ring of Honor. It should be their developmental brand. Or they should have a separate developmental body where they send talent that they have that they want to develop, but maybe they don't have time for them on TV or whatever, and they send them there, and they're still under AEW contract. I think Defy is in Seattle, you know, and a lot of, Swerve is from there, Darby Allin is from there, Nick Wayne is from there. So they have some guys from that area. Maybe send your guys over there and help promote that show or whatever. PWG also, of course, is what AEW, a lot of AEW talent come from there. They definitely need to send talent that need help to somewhere else, you know, and maybe that could help people move along, you know. But as Britt Baker said, you know, Dynamite is our developmental, which is a mistake. So AEW has absolutely no superstars. Who do you see as a superstar in that company? Well, it depends on what you mean by superstar. Do you mean somebody who's mainstream? Because the only people you got are the people that they bought, which is like Edge and Christian, and there's even questions about whether those guys are like mainstream superstars, Danielson and Moxley, Jericho, etc. But have they made any? MJF was very close, but then they botched it by turning him babyface. So, but anyway, thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later. Happy New Year for everybody who come in late. For anybody who wants to talk about Kevin Dunn or the free agents, we talked about that stuff on this stream. Just hit rewind and Thank you guys. Talk to you guys later.